What is up, guys? What is up? Welcome back to the Launchpad podcast. It is your host, of course, Gabriel Hardy. And in this episode today, I had on my buddy Christian from the company Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals. They make the most kick-ass Amanita products and other ethnobotanical goodies, true plant medicine. And if you've watched my channel and or like my social media stuff, you've probably seen me endorse this company. It's the first sponsor of the Launchpad podcast and the first company that I chose to endorse. And the reason why is because, I've watched this sort of market develop for the past several years, and one thing that has been of interest to me is Amanita Muscaria. And, I knew that based on some of the things I had seen that there was a lot of potential in Amanita Muscaria, and I knew that they were becoming very popular, but I also tried a bunch of different companies, a bunch of different Amanita products, and did not find any of them to be very efficacious. And I was almost ready to kind of give up on the Amanita thing until I found Minnesota Nice. And from the bottom of my heart, guys, I'm telling you, they got the highest quality shit. It is so good, and the owner of the company, Christian, as you'll see in this episode, does everything. He does everything with the best sort of intentions and has a sort of mission behind the company. So, I really appreciate them, and I love them, and I highly recommend their products. If you'd like to try some of our products, there'll be like a link down in the description or whatever below. And if you use the code Amanita Ninja, all one word, caps, Amanita Ninja, you'll get 10% off. And of course, I will receive a commission for your order and stuff like that. But in this episode, me and Christian unpack Amanita Muscaria and sort of the neuropharmacology of it, along with other plant medicines. And we dive into, some of the history of it and the spiritual aspects of it, so it was a really good conversation, and I do think that Amanita Muscaria is a true plant medicine that has a lot of potential, so go ahead and check it out. But yeah, thanks for watching. Peace out. Much love. I love you guys.
Merging with simulator in 3, 2, 1.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Launchpad podcast. Today, I have Christian from Minnesota Nice. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. Good. Happy to be here. It's cold and snowy outside here in Minnesota.
Yeah. No. So me and Christian connected a little while ago. It was Renee running the social media. She reached out to me because of some of my TikToks and stuff, and I just started kind of working with you guys, and I felt this certain alignment, I guess I should say, with what you guys had going on, because I'd been observing not just the Amanita market, but sort of like the ethnobotanical supplements, plant medicine market for a long time. And I noticed that Amanitas were becoming extremely popular pretty quickly. And I felt like I was receiving a lot of good education from people like, Amanita Dreamer and stuff like that. And I knew that there was a lot of potential to be had in something like Amanitas. But the issue like that, that you're aware of, and I think a lot of other people are aware of, is that a lot of these companies pushing out Amanita products are not doing it in the most, the most moral way, I guess I should say. And they're pushing out products that are like either low quality, or they're even worse, they're spiking them with things like research chemical benzodiazepines and research chemical, tryptamines. Like I've heard quite a few stories of people say, I took some Amanita gummies, and then what they describe sounds exactly like a 4-ACO DMT trip to me. And I know what that feels like because I've done a lot of 4-ACO DMT in my day, but yeah, and so like, yeah, no, and so I really just wanted to have Christian on because I'm sure if you guys are, if you guys listen to my podcast, if you've watched my channel, you've seen me endorse Minnesota Nice, and it's for a reason. And it's because like I truly believe in the sort of overall mission and the quality of the products. Me and Christian have talked about this before, but I do believe in this sort of like fundamental law of reciprocation in this universe. And some people might know it as karma. And what Christian is putting out there is nothing but, good products with good intention, and it differentiates him and his company from a lot of other people in this market. And so, Christian, I just want you to know, dude, that like I appreciate you, and I love the products, and I'm excited to talk to you. And just to get things started, man, can you tell me sort of like why you formed Minnesota Nice, and what that journey was like for you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. That was very nice. So, I've always been into plant medicines, drugs, to be honest. I've dealt with a lot of addiction issues through my life, but which we can get into a little bit later. But I had tried basically every plant medicine under the sun, aside from Amanita, when all this started. I was going through benzodiazepine withdrawal, so I was coming off of Klonopin. I was actually fully off of it at that point. I'd been off of it for a year, but something with benzodiazepine withdrawal, they call it post-acute withdrawal syndrome, but it's really like, which is the phase after you go through the actual physical withdrawals. And post-acute withdrawal syndrome with benzos can last, a year, 5 years. I know a woman who produced the documentary Medicating Normal, which is a great documentary on overprescription, particularly benzodiazepines and amphetamines, and the damages that they can cause. But she's been off of benzos for 8, 9 years, and she's still in protracted withdrawal. Now, I put the quotes up because it's not really protracted withdrawal syndrome at that point. It's really brain damage. You're dealing with a damaged glutamate system and a damaged GABA system. I found these orange, they're the Gasoi variety here in Minnesota. I might be butchering that name, but a different variety of the traditional Amanita Muscaria, growing at my parents' house, literally a year to the day after I had got off benzos, which I think is an interesting synchronicity. And I was still going through this withdrawal, and I felt, when people might have the pull to do like ayahuasca or something, or the pull to do combo, or to have a MDMA experience, or whatever it may be. There's that pull on your heart, like it's palpable and you can feel it. When I saw these mushrooms growing, it was hands down the strongest pull that I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was like, so a lot of times you can kind of ignore that pull with other substances, even though your intuition wants to like guide you towards them. There was no way I could ignore this pull with Amanita. So I picked them and I went up to my parents' house, and I laid them out on the table and I started doing some research, and everything was, of course, poison. It's going to kill you. It's going to have an awful experience. You're going to have an awful experience. You're going to be very sick, et cetera, et cetera. And then there was one person who you alluded to earlier, Amanita Dreamer, and this was at the beginning of her channel. She had just started, and she claimed that she healed her brain using Amanita, going through this benzo withdrawal, or this healing this brain damage, I suppose. And she outlined a little bit of why she thought it might work, which is that it hits the GABAergic system, but it's non-addictive, non-habit forming. There's no tolerance build up, at least as far as we're aware, which is very unique for a GABAergic. But then it also hits the glutamate system, which is your excitatory system, and it just so happens that the glutamate and the GABA system are what benzodiazepines damage. So I decided that I would give it a shot, and try it with a little bit of trepidation, but like not allowing that to, because one of the things that you have to deal with when going through benzo withdrawal is something that they call kindling. So kindling is when, if you're trying to heal this damaged GABA and glutamate system, if you take something that affects GABA, whether it be alcohol or like valerian roots or anything, there's always a chance, and the stronger the substance, the higher the chance that you'll go into what they call kindling after that experience is done, or after the substance leaves your system, which is basically a revamping of all of the worst withdrawal symptoms that you went through that first initial month or so when you get off of them. So there was some trepidation for sure, because it's a big risk, having to potentially go back into this really bad withdrawal. I was still in withdrawal, but going to the worst phase of it again for another couple of weeks or so. But like I said, and if that pull wasn't so strong, I probably would have not tried it. But it was unbelievably strong, and I microdosed it initially, and I had I had it was energetically, it was very wonderful. It was a microdose. Like I wasn't really feeling it, but I could feel the energy side of it. I could feel things kind of shifting. I had an experience. My sister, I was talking to my sister on the phone, and she was working for a vineyard at that point in time, and they were getting grapes or something from California, and in these boxes, there were little lizards that made it with it. And she said, I took one. And I said, Frank? Just like, it just like came out of me. And she was like, yeah, how did you know? And so it was, and this is the type of experience that we as humans have, uh, frequently if we're tuned in enough. But this one it was really, it was powerful, and it really settled in this idea that like, okay, these are really important for me. They're helping me tap into, they're helping me likely do something that I need by helping me heal, but also tap into this like higher aspect of consciousness. And it was just a microdose, but then I ended up taking a larger dose a few days later, and it felt like after that I had healed what seemed to me like 6 to 8 months worth of time, that I would have been otherwise. So like half of the time that I'd been going through this. And then I microdosed them for a week or so. And I microdosed them for a while, but in the first week of microdosing, I healed to me what felt like 2 to 3 years of healing. It was unbelievable, miraculous in a sense. Um, so I was building a CBD company at this point in time. And I ended up reaching out to Amanita Dreamer because she was the one that helped me understand that this was a viable option. I wouldn't have done it without her. So I reached out to her in pure gratitude and wrote like a 4 page email. I should pull that email up and reread it at some point in time. It was a great email, but um, and offered to sponsor some of her work because I wanted to help her get the message out. So we did a video together. She took a heroic dose of psilocybin and filmed it all, and it was this experience was sponsored by Christian and Minnesota Nice Botanicals. And then we became friends and started working together a little bit more. And it was this happened so I first used it in September. So at the end of September was when I reached out to her. And then by May of the following year, she asked me to start selling Amanita because nobody in the States was doing it. There were some like local foragers that would sell it on online platforms, but there was nobody doing it to scale. Really, nobody could supply the Amanita for her patrons, and that they were growing so much. So yeah, she asked me to start doing it, and coincidentally enough, it was also the timing stuff for some of this has just been unbelievable. I had just developed CHS and found out CHS is cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. So like any cannabis, but then I was using this cannabis for the benzo withdrawal. It helped a lot, but I was using copious amounts and probably abusing it in some way or another. But I realized what I had was CHS, and 2 days, and I like completely shifted my life up with this realization. Like a lot of things work. I mean, there was a lot of things change, and then 2 days later, Dreamer asked me to start selling Amanita, which was another very interesting synchronicity with timing. So yeah, that long story, but I feel there's this spiritual debt in some sense to the mushroom, and I will work the rest of my life to maybe not pay that off. That's probably not the right way to look at it, but to help her get out to more people and benefit more people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I've never personally, and thank you for, your honesty and sharing all that, man, because I think a lot of people are in a similar boat. I mean, like, I think right now there's probably millions of Americans who are prescribed and addicted to benzodiazepines, and I've never personally been addicted to benzodiazepines. I tried them once in high school, had a bad experience, almost got in trouble, and I was like, no, I stuck to weed, and that's been my own journey unpacking that and stuff myself. But I understand from talking to other people, hearing the stories, sort of understanding a little bit of the neuropharmacology that benzodiazepine withdrawal can be brutal, and it can quite literally run people into the grave in terms of I met people when I was in jail who were in there on very lengthy sentences because of a stupid decision they had made on a large dose of benzodiazepines, and that's a lot more common than you would think, you know. And what was super interesting to me about Amanita, and I've loved this from the beginning, there's not a lot of substances out there like this, and you alluded to this a bit, but the sort of reverse tolerance effect. And I don't know if enough people fully understand and kind of talk about this aspect of some of these psychoactive substances. But, you know, to me, that makes Amanita a pretty unique one, especially like you said, because it's you know, has activity at these GABA receptors, and also like has some of that, you know, that glutamatergic response, and it's this synergy, and it seems like, you know, the nature of something like reverse tolerance is that you don't always have to take more and more, you know, and that's this big part of benzodiazepine addiction, and the slippery slope that it leads to is, you know, you take this substance, right? Say you have anxiety or trouble sleeping, and people do have that, and that's valid. And I think that human beings looking to solve that is like our nature, like that makes sense, but they need better tools. But if you have these issues and you take benzodiazepines, you know, it's like, you know, it's this temporary fix where after the fact you get this like whiplash effect where the anxiety, you didn't really address the anxiety or take the actionable steps to get to the root cause of that thing. You know, you took this pharmacological sledgehammer to your head to temporarily not live in that. And, you know, people get this whiplash effect, that the sort of glutamatergic rebound, and there's this cycle that I've seen play out of people having to take more and more. And there is also the concern of the sort of long-term effects that this has on people too. Like, I wonder truly, you know, say somebody who just takes large amounts of benzodiazepines for their entire life, what is that doing to somebody's brain, you know? And if you look at something like Amanita, what's very interesting to me about it too is that it's offering people this sort of relief and way of living with it, but they're remaining lucid, and that's very important to me. That seems to be a big distinction in my mind. One of the distinctions between a true sort of like plant medicine and, you know, something else. You know, like with your withdrawals and using Amanita as a tool, was it sort of like instant relief? Did you immediately feel it? Was it this sort of journey?
Yeah, I mean, it was instant relief in some sense. But, you know, as you explained with the reverse tolerance, it's so I think reverse tolerance is a big aspect of it. Like you don't need as much to get that relief as you move forward. I think another large aspect of it that we don't have any data for at all, but is that it seems to be creating new neural pathways that allow you. So, like when anybody's using any substance, the goal should always be to bring that benefit to your life. Like if you're taking Adderall so that you can study, you can train your brain to be able to study like that when you're off Adderall. But it's difficult. It takes some work. It takes a lot of conscious effort. Amanita seems to kind of do the training on you herself, which is interesting. Like it seems to build these neural pathways, and remove these energy obstructions or whatever, and allow you. I call it the integration medicine because it allows you to integrate any. It allows you to integrate anything. So, like, you want to be a better husband or wife. Like, Amanita can help you integrate that and learn to do that faster and quicker. And on that note, also, it seems to give weight to your thoughts. So, if we're on the subject of like manifesting or attracting or whatever, like, first off, it brings your mood. It seems to bring people's moods into a much more heightened state. But it seems to also give weight to those thoughts, so that those thoughts manifests much, much more powerfully, which I think is a really, really big aspect of Amanita that's been overlooked largely. And I think we're going to see a lot of that coming to the front end of things in the future here. But yeah, and then the reverse tolerance is also interesting. I think that on that note as well, Amanita is kind of its own gatekeeper in a sense. So like with peyote, we'll say that's a good one. That's a good example. Like peyote has been gatekept for a long, long, long time, and for good reason too. Or ayahuasca, like they're very powerful medicines, but and powerful. But since there is dark and light in this infinite universe that we exist in, like it's good to gatekeep very powerful substances because they could be used for very powerful. And it's like how the Aztecs would, eat psilocybin mushrooms and then cut people's hearts out. Amanita seems to be its own gatekeeper for a lot of reasons, but one of the reason is that one of the ways that it does that is through that reverse tolerance, where it's reverse tolerance in the sense that to get the benefits, people might need less and less, or they might not need to take it for an extended period of time, then they'll go back to it. But it also has a reverse tolerance to a lot of people, similarly to cannabis, where some people, like, the first time they smoke, they don't get high. I mean, the first few times they smoke, they don't get high. With Amanita, it seems, particularly if the person is trying to get high, it won't work for them, or they'll have to, like, tune in, is how I like to look at it, like get an energetic resonance with the mushroom itself, to allow them to really start feeling it and understanding it. And in that way, Amanita is its own. In that way, and many other ways, Amanita is its own gatekeeper, which is really cool. Really cool. But yeah,
Yeah. No, I really like how you sort of describe that as like she's her own gatekeeper, because I felt something similar, in my own journey with it, and I've heard it described the same way before by other people in terms of like it's almost like this accumulative effect sometimes in a way. And whenever I first started, I guess you can call it my regiment with Amanita, and started interacting with it, taking it in daily, I was still smoking cannabis daily too. And this was for like a couple weeks or something like that. And then I cut out the cannabis, and since then it does seem to be more effective. And I found this pretty interesting. I went and watched a video that Amanita Dreamer had made, and she's an angel. She really is. I just want to give her a lot of credit and stuff right here. But I watched the video that she made, and she was theorizing that taking cannabis and also taking Amanita, there could be some sort of like the cannabis THC could counteract some of the effects of Amanita. And the way that she described it was, whenever you smoke cannabis, you are upregulating dopamine, and then you're like downregulating GABA and glutamate. And if you think about it with Amanita, like you've described, it has this activity at GABA and the glutamate and stuff. And so it makes sense, but also, like, the thing that I really appreciated about it, man, was it felt like a medicine in terms of it didn't take me out of here in any way, and I've tried. Anxiety is something I've dealt with my whole life, and I feel like through inner work and different like lifestyle practices and stuff, I've gotten a much better grasp on it. But I've tried experimenting with these serotonergic psychedelics before, microdosing them for anxiety, for the purpose of sort of like, people talk about using it as a nootropic. And of course it's always the dose makes the poison and stuff like that. But I've noticed, especially with LSD, for whatever reason, especially with LSD, there seems to be almost this heightening of anxiety. And I think there is something to be said about sitting with that. Do you know what I'm saying? Really sitting with those feelings and looking into them. But, it's also like if I wake up and I have 6 hours of just head steam computer work to do, and I take some LSD and I'm a bunch of anxiety, it's not exactly where I needed to be right then. Maybe that's, safe for ceremony, but I was looking into it, and LSD is sort of a complicated substance, and it has, some activity with like dopamine and things. So it makes sense that there might be some anxiety spike, but I often hear microdosing, and when people refer to microdosing, they're usually referring to serotonergic psychedelics, at least right now, that, it's this sort of magical bullet. People can approach it like that sometimes. And I definitely think it's a very potent medicine for a lot of people. I think it has that potential. But I think it's a lot more complicated than some people make it out to be. And I know that I'm not the only one who deals with anxiety and stuff, and so like I can see how something like Amanita has so much potential. And I wanted to ask you, because you're talking a little bit about your sort of healing journey from benzodiazepines with Amanitas, and you brought up that you both did microdoses and you did macrodoses. I would like for you to like kind of describe in your own terms from your own personal subjective experiences what the difference in experience is of a macrodose Amanita experience compared to a microdose. And then also if somebody were to approach you right now, once again, we're not giving medical advice, this is just but if someone were to approach you and say like, I'm going to do a large dose of Amanita, what sort of like advice, recommendations would you give them to sort of minimize harm and optimize for therapeutic potential?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think no other substance that I'm aware of responds, maybe ayahuasca and DMT, but I don't know, responds to intention in the way that Amanita does. As I mentioned before about it, like giving your thoughts a very specific weight that allows them to manifest or have more power. I think that that's the most important thing going into anything, whether it's any psychoactive anything experience, but particularly with Amanita, whether it's microdosing or macrodosing. I mean, I think that if we state or put pen to paper, make concrete what we're wanting to accomplish and achieve, that's the best way to. You're kind of pre-paving the road that you're about to traverse, making it. If you're walking through a field of grass, tall grass, and you're walking through the grass, that's one thing. But if you can mentally push all that grass down in one nice pathway, then you're able to walk it much more efficiently. So I think intention's the biggest thing. I think that it's also really important for people to watch their thoughts. I think that this is, it's one of the most important things to do in any spiritual teaching, but it's important for a lot of reasons. But in relating to Amanita, again, whether it's microdosing or macrodosing, I think that a lot of the changes that happen are changes in our thought processes, and then it's the thought processes changing that allows for these changes to be instituted, that break the energetic blocks, that start building these new neural pathways and start manifesting new better realities. So if one is not used to watching their thoughts, I think it's difficult a lot of times, particularly with microdosing. It's difficult to see what it's doing, and I'll wrap around to describing the macrodose in a little bit. But I think that so we had a woman a while ago who was saying that she'd been microdosing for a couple weeks, but she really didn't know if anything was happening. She wasn't sure, and I gave her some tips and pointers and expressed what I thought might be going on. And mind you, another thing is like this is all in the infancy stages. Like I'm learning every day, and everybody that's involved with this is learning every day. So we change directions a little bit as we gather more information and more energy. But there was a couple weeks after she reached out initially that she got in touch again. And she said, "I figured out what's going on." She's like, "I realized that I have not been talking down to myself in my head at all since I started it." Or at least like significantly reduced. And that's such an unbelievably powerful thing that has, end results in a lot of different fields of action or how we, react or whatever it may be. But she wasn't aware of it initially because she wasn't, staying in tune to her thoughts. So I think anybody in any situation, we should all watch our thoughts. We should all guard our thoughts constantly, because our thoughts create, our emotional responses. Our thoughts, it's the basis for everything, and that's very particularly with going into Amanita. I also think that also it's like a great way for people to train themselves to start watching their thoughts and guarding their thoughts, like utilizing something like Amanita. And that's on that note too. It's like if somebody has anxiety and it's palpable anxiety and it creates, it stems from thought loops and it creates this physical response to it. it's physical. So that person will notice the Amanita having an effect a lot more than the person that doesn't have anxiety, because they feel the physical difference in their body, which is a lot more apparent for most people than the mental difference that happens. So yeah, I think intention and watching your thoughts is like the biggest two things. There's a bunch of other ones, but as far as so microdosing, I mean, most people, if they notice anything aside from a shift in their thought processes, it's lowering of inhibitions, a little bit more jolly. It's like the Santa Claus mushroom, so there's this jolliness to it. And the more tangible side of things. There's a whole bunch of other things that are not very tangible and hard to put into words that we won't get into now, but at a later time. People generally are more outgoing. A lot of people find that it helps them with sleep. People find that it reduces anxiety. A lot of people find, and again with what we touched on before, it's not like it's just in the moment either. It seems to like break energetic blocks and build up these neural pathways that allow us to embody that when we're out of the experience or when we're done with our microdosing regimen. High doses are fascinating. So anybody that came up to me and asked me, I'm going to do a high dose, what do you think? What should I do? I would say work your way up to it. I would say microdose for a week or two first and watch your thoughts throughout the entire process, journal, and tune in to the mushroom. I would say communicate with the mushroom, ask the mushroom for what you want. The mushroom is a conscious entity as well, and she will respond to your questions in various ways. But so build a communication, build up a relationship with it, build resonance, and then I would recommend to, if I was giving a recommendation to a friend, I would say, and then after microdosing, try 3 to 5 grams. Try that out, see how it goes. And then if you like that and want to do more, try 8, 9, 10 grams. And then if you really like that and you want to do more, go for the 15-gram heroic dose. It's difficult to explain. It's got some aspects of like the Alice in Wonderland, dissociative. Things are big and small. Like there's a little bit of that distortion. There's an extreme lowering of inhibitions, which allows like journeying to be. It makes it a lot easier when there's no like concern or anxiety about what you're going through. There are some of the more lesser liked side effects by most people are the muscle twitching. Like people will twitch like randomly, and it can be pretty frequent, and it can be disturbing for people that don't know what's going on. I love it at this point because I love Amanita, but yeah, for a lot of people that's difficult. And again, this stuff gets so hard to explain. But then there's the potential to get stuck in these time loops where you'll like do something and then loop back around to doing it again and again and again. These can be unbelievably spiritual and powerful if your thoughts are geared in the right direction. And this is another reason why it's so important to do the microdosing and work your way up to all this and guard and watch your thoughts as this happens, because if you give in to fear when you're thought looping, it can be traumatic and difficult. However, if you are putting your energy into discovering new insights about yourself or healing traumas or whatever it may be, those thought loops can be unbelievably beneficial because you're literally breaking those energetic walls that you've had up. Like sledgehammer. You have that ability to go in over and over and over again and do a lot of work. It can also be extraordinarily spiritual and connected. So I like to say that like if traditional psychedelics bring you outward, Amanita brings you inward. If psychedelics are the crown chakra, Amanita is the root chakra, and obviously it's more nuanced than that. But it's like it's very grounding. So the other really cool, well, if we're on the spirituality aspect of it, the dreams are the big ticket for this. So like if you lay down on these higher doses and let your body fall asleep, you can go into DMT like almost. It's different though, but unbelievably powerful dream lessons can come through. And you'll be like half lucid, half asleep. But I've had some crazy experiences. I had an experience where uh, I felt what it felt like to be God living through every single human. Like I felt everybody in the entire world, you know, and then there was a lot more to it. Of course, that's intangible and hard to describe, but like the potential for high caliber experiences is pretty strong with high doses of amanita if you're doing it properly. And a lot of that, again, we need to guard our thoughts. We need to make sure our thoughts are focused in the right and are being pumped with energy that's in the right direction, and then yeah, trying to sleep on it. I mean, yeah, it's something about laying down in your bed and closing your eyes and letting it take you, is it can be unbelievably powerful. Yeah. So it's again hard to describe, intangible, potentially very very beautiful. If you're not prepared properly, it could be difficult and tough. So.
Yeah, and man, it's like everything. At the beginning of this podcast, you mentioned the fact that whenever you went to go do your sort of initial research, there was a lot of this sort of fear mongering around it, right? And it's like any other substance in terms of like you need to be educated and you need to be aware of potential dangers and different things like that. But to me, man, with pretty much every substance, it's like the dose truly makes the poison. You know, if you look at something like, okay, you know, people want to. I made a post on Reddit one time asking a question about Amanitas, just seeing kind of what the responses and stuff I would get, and the majority of it was like bad. You know, it was like don't touch, like bad, scary. You know, I couldn't believe it, and you know, is if you look at like something like alcohol, right? If you bring up alcohol, people aren't generally like, oh, no, don't ever touch, bad. Like, but alcohol kills people all the time. It has the potential to do that. But in most sort of scenarios, people are cognizant and aware of the potential dangers. And not saying they still don't astray, you know, into that, but the sort of understanding that people have of it, you know, allows them to interact with that thing in a way where they're not going to kill themselves or get themselves into a dangerous situation. And there was something you mentioned in there too that I thought was really interesting, and that was that, you know, you can have this very potent, powerful sort of mystical experience with Amanita, but yet because of that sort of anxiolytic effect or anti-anxiolytic effect, whichever one it is, the terminology there, but it allows people to go deep in a sort of safe way. You know what I mean? And that reminds me, and I know it's a wildly different experience, but it reminds me a bit of what I like about ketamine and why I think ketamine can be a good tool for some people, is because it has that same potent, you know, insights, introspectiveness, out of body experience type thing, but with that tranquilizing effect. You know, I can see how a lot more people can slip into that space more manageably compared to, you know, some people really struggle with a high dose of something like psilocybin and LSD. But okay, so one thing about psychedelics that has always fascinated me, psychoactive substances in general, I should say, since I started interacting with them and studying them and stuff like that, is, so for instance, when you take something like DMT, right, you're presented with this chrysanthemum of imagery and feelings and thoughts, and it can feel, people describe it sometimes as realer than real. And one of the things that first hit me about this was like, oh, I was thinking about human history and the sort of like effect that this has had on human history, and the variations and different ways that people have interacted with this, and how that has shaped culture and shaped religion and spiritual practices and things like that, you know. And I know that there's some theories out there. You know, Amanita is one of these mushrooms that grows in many different parts of the world, and of course it's seasonal and different things like that. But you know, human beings have, like, almost for certain have been interacting with this mushroom for a long time. So, like, do you ever sit back and have, like, especially when you have some of these deep Amanita experiences, have you ever thought about like an ancient, and I say ancient, but you know, somebody a long time ago in human history who had this, and maybe the ripple effect that had on society? I'm sure you know you've heard of Soma and stuff, but you know, what are your thoughts on like Amanita's role in the sort of psycho spiritual development of the human race?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that Yeah, I think yes, for sure. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot of good evidence that suggests it was very heavily utilized. There's a lot of good evidence that suggests it was a building block of Christianity. It was, as you mentioned, the Soma and the Vedic hymns. Um, it's certainly been used by cultures for thousands and thousands of years. And as with any, I mean, like it's possible that like DMT led to the creation of a lot of the stories in the Bible. It's very very plausible and possible. On that note, it's very plausible and possible that Amanita has had its hand in a lot of the growth in the direction that humanity has gone down. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and I do think about it quite a bit for sure. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to
Yeah.
learn.
And I th-
We're still learning, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I would be unpacking that for quite some time, and it's super interesting to me. But I think one thing that people miss out on sometimes with this, and I hear like different arguments, and there's a lot of like theories proposed with certain evidence of like we'll see like they're interacting with like this substance, and like they're probably doing that. And when I think about it, and you think about modern day like I don't know what the right word is, plant medicine culture, psychonaut culture, and stuff like people do have their preferences and their sort of like their tools in their tool belt that they're comfortable with and like and stuff. But a lot of people who do these things, man, they also venture into the sort of synergistic nature of combining things, and not only combining substances, but combining it with sensory deprivation and combining it with meditation and breath work. And when I look at the like I said earlier, the sort of influence of these psychoactive substances on human history, I think it was a panacea of just of a bunch of different ways of reaching an altered state of consciousness, that we're looking at. And like with something like Soma, it wouldn't surprise me if like Amanita Muscaria was it, or also if it was like part of some, crazy mixture that was also, cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms or there's all sorts of possibilities. And not only that, but, we're still discovering psychoactive substances within plants, and there's no telling. Maybe at one point in human history, in certain geographical locations, they had access to some compound that we're not even aware of. You know,
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Especially in the ocean. Like there could be so many different psychoactive substances in the ocean that we just have no idea about. I liked, I think Amanita in sensory deprivation tanks will be one of the big things. We've actually there's I don't know how much you get into this or your listeners get into this, but it's said by certain people that various groups in secret societies, high-ranking secret societies, utilize Amanita in sensory deprivation chambers or in float tanks, which is pretty fascinating. And so, like to circle back a little bit to the gatekeeping. So I think that gatekeeping is a part of the way that this mushroom has also like kept itself safe through this like banning of all of these substances that we've seen in the past. Well, I mean, really, the past 100 years or so with them destroying all of the ancient knowledge, or at least tucking it away. But one of the best ways that it's gate kept by itself, is that it is poisonous, or it does make people sick, or it's I mean in our culture, at least, when you were talking about reading reports about Amanita and like all the bad reports, it's like everybody, it's people taking like 15 grams, like a heroic dose, and then like expecting to have a good experience without doing any of that proper legwork to get there and have it be a really beneficial experience. But I mean, yes, I think it's for sure had its hand in the development of this human story, as have all these other psychoactive plants and fungi. But I think it's really fascinating that it's coming out now, And it's coming out now at this most pivotal time in human history where we're on some sort of a tipping point where everybody can feel this static. They can feel that something's about to pop, but we don't know what it is. And she just so happens to start coming out of the woodwork and integrating herself itself into our individual lives, into us as a species collectively. Yeah, I mean, for sure. There's all the, it's super fascinating to think about all this stuff. I think that what I'm really, really interested in is the story now and why it's coming out now and what the potential is and what the future history is going to look like. Because that's all part of the plan, you know? But yeah.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people are feeling that right now, man. It's like we're sitting in this, like you said, tension, but it's like this sort of nexus point of possibilities of where it can go from here, and we're rapidly advancing with technology and of course, AI and all of that, and geopolitics, and then also like aliens, and psychedelic cultures exploding. It is fat. I sit back a lot and think about, man, like if it really was all just a coincidence, that I was born into this body at this time, like wow, like that's, I think, I feel gratitude, because it is a insanely interesting time to be a human being, and also I think that it's a very important time to sort of like step up and speak your truth about these things. I think a lot of people are reaching this point in life of it's like they're searching for meaning, like true meaning. And that's one thing that I've pulled away from my years of experimentation and then diving into myself, and exploring the cosmos and stuff like that with these various psychedelic drugs is before I started doing all that, there was this sort of like feeling as a child of like, what is all this about, and it's confusing and it can be scary at times and stuff like that. But I had this experience on DMT where it was directly told to me that like, hey, like, like you're born like in that body at this time in history for a reason. And yeah, I mean, I do think that something like amanitas and true plant medicines, right? Like let's talk about that. Like I think that I'm not this person who is like anti-pharmaceutical, but I'm also not like pro-pharmaceutical. Like if my kid was about to die of an infection or something, like I would be, pray to God and that I'm grateful for antibiotics or whatever. But I do think that it is they're sort of like massively overprescribed, and with something like Amanita's plant medicines, I've noticed there just seems to be this trend of people switching from these isolated compounds, these things that, and a lot of them are derived from plants, and that's where they get the ideas, and they build off that. But there just seems to be this problem that happens a lot of time when you isolate a compound down and mainline that, compared to having that full sort of alkaloid spectrum. It's like that innate sort of intelligence of nature, and I mean, maybe it's woo woo or whatever, but there seems to be this massive correlation between people like getting on healthier like plant medicines and be like, wow, like this seems to work with my body, a whole lot better. And yeah, and you briefly described your sort of like journey with that, but with Minnesota Nice, Amanita is a huge part of it, of course, but it's not just Amanita. There's other plant medicines there available, and I just wonder, like, I want to ask you, besides Amanita, have you found like any other sort of plant medicines that you found to be really useful in your journey?
Yeah. Blue Lotus. Blue Lotus was the second thing that we started carrying. I just so happened to have a connection to a really nice extract. So we brought on the Blue Lotus extract. And it took me a while to figure this out. It wasn't until 4 or 5 months ago that I figured out where Blue Lotus really shines. So like it's great for meditation. It's really wonderful for meditation. It's not super physical. It's subtle. It's also, you got to watch your thoughts. It's a lot of these plant medicines are subtle unless you are very in tune with your thoughts. Um, but we found out as I started microdosing Blue Lotus because I had just taken it, taken enough to get me the effects and meditated and whatnot. So we're microdosing sub-perceptual amounts of Blue Lotus. And what started happening to me is that my heart started to open. I started to get more compassionate. I started to get more loving. My ability to love was grander. And so we kind of like did a soft release with our Blue Lotus gummies where I like outlined this. I was in the description for the product. I was like, look, I think this is what we're looking at. I think this is the potential. I think this potential has been lost for a long, long, long time. I'm sure that they knew about it in Egypt back in the day, and we're finding consistency with our customers that, yeah, it indeed opens the heart. It opens the heart chakra. It brings people into a place where they have a greater capacity for love and compassion and understanding, which the world so desperately needs right now. So yeah, Blue Lotus would for sure be the next one. We have Kana. Kana is probably the next most efficacious. Kana is, I believe it's an SNRI, but it's an instant acting serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. So its mechanism of action is very similar to various antidepressant drugs. However, with Kana, you don't have to let it build up in your system. It has an immediate effect, which is nice. It also, again, we don't have data on this. I'm not entirely sure. But from what it seems like, there's really no addiction potential with it. And also, there's always potential for psychological addiction. That's not an addiction to the substance. That's an addiction to your thoughts. But there doesn't seem to be any tolerance or addiction to it. That's a really, really efficacious plant that grows in South Africa and Africa. They even prescribe it in Africa for people. Like doctors will prescribe it if somebody has anxiety. They'll use like a Kana extract or literally go chew the root, a couple of times a day. So Kana is a good one. Kava is probably the most popular, well-known out of everything. I mean, I guess Blue Lotus is well-known at this point, and Amanita is getting there. Kava, we see the Kava bars everywhere, which is a great, great, great idea. We're actually in the works of doing some fun things with these ideas and expanding on them a little bit, which hopefully we'll be able to start releasing soon. But we have a great Kava extract. I actually just had somebody reach out about a Kava source for the raw powdered root from Vanuatu. So if he's going to send me some samples, if that works, we'll start carrying that too. Kava it's an inebriant is the best way to describe it. It's similar to alcohol. It has GABAergic effects. It also blocks sodium ion channels, which it's intoxicating in a sense. It's also it's inhibiting, so it increases sociability. People might note reduction in anxiety. Some people note help with sleeping. Some people it keeps them awake. I'm that type of person. I can't take it close to bedtime, but it's another really valuable tool. And then we have a handful of other ones. We have some dream products that are Onergons, I think is what they're called, but they help. They make dreams more vivid and help one if they're looking for insights in their dreams or if they're looking to start or continue a lucid dreaming practice. They're really great for that. And I think dreams are one of the untapped gold mines of our human psyche or our human story that hopefully we'll start seeing a little bit more progress being made as a collective as we move towards this new earth. And then one of the other things that we're getting ready to do is to build a Christian's Kratom website. So I was hesitant on Kratom for a while because I used Kratom to get off of opiates in my early 20s. And it was great for that. It really, really helped me. And there's so much efficacy for that, for helping individuals with, it hits the same receptors. It's also addictive in its own right, though. And I was getting to a point where I was taking an obscene amount of it for a long, long time, and I saw that potential addiction in it, which made me hesitant on selling it. I could have been selling it this entire time, but I didn't want to do any harm, do no harm. However, I think as I've developed more and been in communication with the people that are purchasing from us and understanding what people are going through, I think that there's a really big place for it. It can help a lot of people. I just need to be very. I need to make very blatant disclaimers so that people know what they're getting into. So that's coming. We can't do that on the website because merchant accounts won't let us sell Amanita and Kratom, which is kind of silly. But and then we're also building a Christian's cannabis website right now too. So any cannabis products that are legal in your state will be able to offer you in the next few months here. And one of the big things is like quality is like at the top of my list. So anything that we release is going to be the best quality that you can find on the market. This is another thing with the Kratom. Like I'm really connected with some of the biggest players in the Kratom business, but the quality is just not up to my standards. So yeah, but yeah, everything's going to be at the top caliber of quality. But yeah, so there's a host of other things on the website that any listener can check out. But those are the big ones, and coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can really sympathize and I understand the sort of like dilemma that you went through with Kratom, because that's always been an interesting one to me, Kratom. But because there is people who run into problems with it, you become addicted to it. And people, there's a whole like quitting Kratom subreddit, people who struggle with these withdrawals and things like that. But to me, it reminds me a lot of like sort of my opinion on the drug war in general and like personal sovereignty. Whether we like it or not, people are going to do substances. They have this desire to perturb their consciousness. And with something like opiates, man, I my heart goes out to that, because a lot of people who get on opiates, it's like because they were dealing with chronic pain, and this is like the only sort of option that the doctors they trusted wanted to give them, and so many people fall into it that way. And chronic pain, I get that, because it's like chronic pain. If you have true chronic pain, it's not a life to live, and I can understand the temptation to want to take an opiate. Like if that was my only option and I was disabled by my pain, I'd probably be on prescription opiates too. But I do think that, yeah, and I do think that people need to be like honest with themselves about kratom, the relationships to substances. They need to be aware of, the potential for physical addiction and things like that. But it's like, man, I mean, compared to something like Oxycontin or, fentanyl, or whatever, it's this is a lot safer for the general population. And two, it seems like while the withdrawals can be pretty bad for some people, I've heard horrific stories of people coming off of Suboxone. Like here, I live in the state of Kentucky, and it's crazy, man, because like I'm on probation, and even people on probation and parole, they're allowed to get Xanax prescribed to them. They can get Suboxone prescribed to them, excuse me. But, and it's mind blowing to me. But the same people who they're allowed to take Suboxone, you could get thrown back into jail for, having kratom in your system. And it's this completely sort of like, and it's sad. And it to me, for a long time, it did anger me. There was a lot of anger around that, and like, this is ridiculous, the system, definitely like that. But it's this, I truly don't think a lot of people have that sort of level of awareness, and also even when people do have this level of awareness, it's very hard to get things to sort of change in this country, and it goes back to a lot of the things that I've said about like plant medicines and stuff like that. And you brought up kava. And if you look at the societies, the parts of the world, like these Pacific Islander, clusters who have been traditionally using kava for a very long time, and it's like deeply embedded into their way of life, we have to look at them and say like, all right, so what has this ripple effect been on like their society? And generally, from what I've heard, It's like, I mean, it's not as bad as like alcohol society. There's not as much crime. There's a lot more community.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think like the proof's in the pudding. Like it's we're shown by that ripple effect what the substance is all about. And in the end, like kratom, for example, the end effects in totality is that it's helped so many people, and it's the end. It's a net positive substantially in the end. Yeah, with kava, yeah, I mean it's such a better alternative, healthier, more liberating alternative than alcohol. I mean, it's not super similar, but it is. It's very similar. I think that so like I use kratom now again after I was off it for 5 6 years, and now I have a very balanced, non-addictive relationship with kratom. So what I was finding throughout, so like I've dealt with addiction issues my entire life. It's always been an aspect of what I've had to deal with. Things have been changing a lot, particularly when I got off benzos and then found Amanita. But I also found that while taking kratom, I was it's almost the teacher in the sense that it's taught me to not get stuck in those thought loops or that wanting to redose or whatever it may be or wanting to take it too often and it's so gentle in the sense that those cravings or urges aren't so powerful that they take me over. So I'm able to alter these thought loops and remove these energetic blocks that I've dealt with my whole life that have kept me in this addictive cycle. So I think that there's a lot of benefit for kratom, and I think it's potentially so beneficial because you can get addicted to it. It is possible. I mean, and there's physical withdrawals, which make it really like it's a very tangible thing that you're attempting to avoid. Where something like cannabis, if you're just gonna like, I mean, I guess there's withdrawals, but if you're just gonna be a little frustrated for a week or two, like it's different. Like for me, kratom's really helped me help clean up my these energetic barriers that I've had. I also, and I just, this is a very recent experience, so I want to bring it up. I've had these heart opening experiences a handful of times in my life. Most of them have always been in conjunction with some sort of substance, psychedelic, whatever it may be. And they're powerful, but they don't last. They weren't able to be integrated, so when you come back, it's not there as much. Sure, there's a little feeling of lightness and a little bit better, but a few weeks ago, I had a full heart opening experience, and it was like without any substance. It was unbelievably powerful. I can't even like put it into words. I was like, I and well, yeah, and I ended up realizing that. So I felt for like a week and a half. I was like, it felt like I was on all of the drugs, but like the best version of these drugs that were not detrimental. Like it was physical, it was intense. I was like so present. It was absolutely wonderful. And coming out of that, like my ability for love and compassion is bigger, but I don't have that physical response. It's not quite as intense as it was initially. I'm sure there's stages to this type of thing too. So like I'll have another one in a month or two, who knows, but and then I'll be a little bit further in my ability to love. But the reason I bring this up is because what I found or what I realized was that that's what I was looking for my entire fucking life. That's what I was addicted to. That's what I've been trying to find because I remembered it. I remembered it from other experiences, not in this body, and I knew it was obtainable. And the only way to get me, one of the very interesting things was it felt like a conglomeration of a bunch of different substances, but the one that it felt the closest to, if I were to have to pick one substance that it felt the closest to, it would be heroin. It felt the closest to heroin. And like so I started realizing and understanding that all of these addicts, that's what they're looking for. That's what they're chasing. That's the dragon that they're chasing that they're never able to catch. But if one does the work and opens their heart, it fulfills its love. I mean, we're all looking for love, but not like how you know one might love their spouse but then like, get frustrated with them when they do this or that. But like the true divine creation love, like true love, like that's what everybody's looking for. And that's the key to solving, humanity's issues. And that's what all the spiritual teachers have taught throughout their lives, like, or throughout history. Like it's all love. Yeah. So this is a new thing that just developed. I obviously haven't shared this, with Renee is actually the only Renee and Alana, my significant other, are the only people that have heard about this. But I'm happy to share it because I think it's such a important point about some of these ailments that humanity's plagued with, like more than anything. Like we're all just looking for love. We're all looking for the same thing.
Yeah. And what we're looking for too, and yeah, what we're looking for is unconditional love too, because like, man, we all have, like, nobody's perfect, like we all have our dark side and our bad parts and stuff like that. And one of the most liberating things in this world that I've come across is finding people who hold the space for you in the entirety of your being. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't have to put on a mask and always be like the perfect gay version that for me to love you. That's conditional love. It's that true, powerful, it's godly. To me, it's godly. It's one of the most godly things you can do in this world is show people unconditional love. You look at like the story, and we're talking about Christianity and stuff all day, the problems and, different things. But man, like the story of Jesus, like I love it just because to me, it's like one of the biggest like heroic journeys. And there was this dude who showed people unconditional love and was willing to die for what he believed in. And I think that in itself is powerful. I'm not a Christian, but, I like that story, and I resonate with a lot of like what you were getting at there in terms of that experience you had. Felt like your heart being opened and you were sober. I have these experiences, probably like at least once a week, man, where I'll be completely sober. And I've noticed it's usually when I'm with my son, and for whatever reason, I'm able to like fully be present. You know what I mean? It's usually a combination of things like, the inner work I do on myself, like how much sleep I got, things like that. But I'll have these moments where it's like this, it feels like this sort of like resonance, this, like washing over me. And it's not like a sound, but it is just like this almost this slight knowing, and this I see the divine in just the simplest things, and you said something there of like, I think that's what all drug addicts are trying to get to. And I almost like started tearing up, man, because like I see that in other people, and I truly have a lot of compassion and empathy for people who are addicted to drugs, man, because you see someone who's in the throes of it, dude, like nobody wants to be there. Like really, like people don't want to be in that, man. And I think that at the core of it, we have to ask ourselves. I think to start addressing it and really moving forward, we have to have that level of empathy and ask ourselves, like, what is it that they're searching for, and like what is the sort of path to actually sort of get there. And then that's why since I started doing them, I've been the biggest proponent of plant medicines and like doing them efficaciously, and like let's talk about it, and like let's get educated and stuff. I think it's insanely powerful. But I've also noticed times, there was like a time in my life where I was facilitating DMT experiences in my apartment, and I was like 19 years old, and there was definitely like a bit of delusion involved in that, but I felt that calling to be like that sort of helping hand, but it was this weird internal dilemma, because I had people coming to me wanting to do DMT, and it didn't feel right turning them away, but I also understood that like I was playing with fire in a way, like it's something like that. And so, yeah, man, I really resonate and love what you said about like, what are people trying to get to? And I thought about this too. I took this work trip to California, and it was it was a good trip, and like I, appreciated it, and I had as much, enjoyed it as much as I can and stuff. And I hadn't gotten really to like travel in a long time. And when I had my son when I was 17, and so since then it's just been a lot of like nose to the grindstone, working on myself, working on work and school and stuff like that. But there was always that question of like, did I miss out on anything, and questions like that. But I was sitting there in California, And I was like, man, I was like, I haven't missed out on anything. And what I was thinking about is that like while I was there in California, what I noticed is like the thing I was searching for was like either to connect with other people or like to connect with myself. You know what I mean? And I think people have all sorts of different coping mechanisms and modalities that they try to achieve this, but I have found that like one of the quick, if I'm in like having a bad day or just struggling a little bit, the thing that pulls me out of it the quickest is like either sitting with it, fully feeling it, and or like calling a friend, calling my mom or something, and just connecting with somebody else. They're human beings crave that. We crave that. But I think there's also an element to this where a lot of people are sick in our society. I don't mean that in an ugly way, but I do believe that like a lot of people are sick. And I also think sometimes that there can be this sort of like contagious effect sometimes with mental illness,
Yeah.
and there's also this mirroring that happens. And because people mirror each other, there can be this amplification of sickness or craziness, but yeah, dude, I really, really appreciate something that grows from the ground, this little umbrella, and it's got like nature's intuition in it, and it seems to freaking help people, you know? Yeah. But, yeah, man. So like whenever I first got into the Amanita market and stuff, I tried like quite a few different brands, and I was almost at the point of like not giving up on it, but like my interest had peaked. I tried like 4 or 5 different types of branded gummies and stuff, but didn't really like find get anything out of much of them. And of course, there's that element of Amanita being her own gatekeeper and the reverse tolerance effect and things like that. But dude, whenever I tried your guys' gummies for the first time, it was just like instantly different. And I was like, I get it. I was like, I get it,
Quick.
And so like, I yeah, and so I wanted to ask you, man. Like, of course, don't give away your secrets or whatever if you can. But like, what sets Minnesota's nice, Amanita gummies apart from the competition? Aside from, of course, we're not putting freaking 4-ACO DMT in it.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the biggest thing is if somebody's spiking their gummies with something else. But if it's just regular Amanita gummies, a lot of time people will just put the raw powder in them, which there's consuming and like we have the capsules which are encapsulated Amanita powder, and that's fine. There's also a little bit of we also have to put in our capsules are 500 milligrams where our gummies are 350. I think that they're about the same potency, and I think that that's likely because you have to digest insoluble fibers and whatnot to get to the active compounds. If you're just consuming the raw powder, so I think that that's we utilize an extract. The extract also retains the beta glucans, which I think is a big part of this. Beta glucans are what likely gives Amanita its anti-inflammatory effects, probably a host of other things. But those are retained in our extract, the specific extract process that we use. And we're also decarbing it to a very specific amount, where other people they'll buy a lot of these companies are actually doing Amanita. They purchase their extract from us or from one of my partners, and it'll be a full decarb extract. The other people that are selling extracts on the market right now, those are also generally fully decarbed extracts. They utilize when you utilize a solvent, something like methanol, for instance, it fully decarboxylates the iotenic acid into muscimol. So you're not getting that glutamine response, where you're just getting the GABAergic, which there's a place for that for sure, which is one of the reasons that we sell that extract. However, it's really the balance between the two. And then the third, the muscarine, which we haven't touched on at all either, but we're finding a lot out very in the past few weeks about muscarine, which I'll let you in on once we've developed it all a little bit more. It's like the holy trinity, though, kind of. But so it goes through a decarb process that basically mimics the tea if one were to like decarb it by boiling in water with some lemon juice for 30 minutes or so. It mimics that process while it's being extracted, and then yeah, so it's there. It's more potent. It's more bioavailable. It has a very specific decarb rate that we developed very specifically because we believe it creates for the best experience. Yeah. I think that answers it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense, man. It totally does. And so another thing that I found interesting about Amanitas is the sort of different routes of administration, right? And like I know that we sell these Amanita Nice Sticks, which is a combination of it's a pre-roll with Amanita Muscaria, Blue Lotus, and Mullion. Um, but could you like briefly touch on that and these sort of like difference in the different routes of administration? Combustion compared to oral. Also, like one thing I've noticed too is that, and this I know this can get shady fast depending on the company and stuff like that. But I've noticed that some people are selling like e-liquids with Amanita in it and or muscimol. What could you like briefly touch on that? What you think about
Yeah,
these different
yeah.
routes of administration?
Yeah, so I mean, smoking it, it's kind of like with cannabis. If you eat cannabis, it's going to be, you're going to need more for the same strength of effect, but it's going to last significantly longer and it's not going to hit you as hard. It's going to be a gradual come up. It's similar with Amanita. So if you smoke Amanita, it's a lot quicker. It affects you a lot quicker. It's a significantly shorter experience, but it's more pronounced. You need less. So the nice sticks, they have the Blue Lotus in them as well. I think that Blue Lotus and Amanita are super synergistic together. So they go really well together. The Mullen is just to like make the smoke a little bit thicker and to help clean the lungs out as you're smoking. Um, but yeah, so I mean, smoking it, you it's it's a little bit different. I don't know how I would describe it being different. I guess it's a little bit more physical, I feel like, when you smoke it. Um, yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. It's a little more physical. Um, but yeah, and then I mean, there's so Jen, who is in charge of all of our expos and shows and getting out to public events and stuff like that. She likes to put the full decarb extract. So another thing about when you're smoking it, when you light it, it decarboxylates all of the ibotenic acid. So you're not getting any ibotenic acid. It's just muscimol, muscarine, and then whatever other flavonoids, polyphenols, whatever else is in it, the compounds. There's probably a bunch of other stuff that we don't know about what's going on. And on that note, so we like with our full decarb extract, it's 5, 6, 7, 8% muscimol, and it's only alkaloids. So then there's 92 to 95% of other things. And I mean, there's some data out there about what some of these are, but like we have no idea what they're doing and so like, to backtrack even more, I'll wrap it all back. But I know for a fact that Amanita hits the endogenous cannabinoid system. I know that because cannabinoids make me sick. Amanita makes me sick. So, like, I know for a fact it hits the endogenous cannabinoid system, or there's some sort of downstream effect, possibly from the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors, and possibly from muscimol or ibotenic acid as well. But so there's a lot going on in Amanita that we don't know about. But yeah, so when you smoke it, you're decarboxylating it. Jen likes to put the full decarb extract into a bowl of cannabis and smoke that as like a bowl topper, and she loves that. She swears by it. There's also sublingual administration, and that's tough with like the raw mushroom powder, but you can do it if you wanted to like take your microdose sublingually. You just put the 350 milligrams, half a gram under your tongue and let it sit there for 20, 30 minutes and swallow the saliva as it comes, and then swallow it in the end. That'll hit quicker. It'll be a little bit slightly more potent. I don't think that there's really a difference in the effects, but possibly. And then, well, yeah, and then you can smoke the raw. You can smoke the raw material in a bowl, something like that. A lot of people do that. It's not my favorite way to use it. I think that smoking it personally, it's too much matter to smoke. It's too much fungal matter. But a lot of people really like it and get good effects out of it. Not my cup of tea, but yeah, a lot of people like it.
Yeah, whenever I was looking at it on the website and I saw mullion, I figured that was kind of like the purpose was to make it a smoother smoke, but you could still get the effects of the Amanita and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up for the day. But is there anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with? Any last words you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think that if anybody is feeling a little pull in their heart, if anybody's feeling that sense of being drawn in, uh, even if it's super super subtle, like that's your intuition, that's your higher self, that's you telling yourself to explore this a little bit more. So come on over. Like you can follow us or follow Gabe. You can subscribe to our newsletters, which give out, sales and whatnot. Even if you don't want to try it, like follow the story. I think that as this story develops, I mean, honestly, I think that this story is going to go down in history, like very strongly. So like, if you feel a little bit of a pull, watch it unfold. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll be on top of all of the happenings. We have some magnificent, powerful, amazing things that we're working on. Things that nobody has ever done in the history of humanity. Things that are not my idea or anybody on the team's ideas. Things that are quite literally coming from the mushroom or quite literally coming from the other side. And they're really really powerful, amazing things that I can see how they might be talked about for quite a long time. So come over and watch it unfold. And if you want to try it, give it a shot. I'm sure the website link will be in the description below. Yeah, come on over and give it a shot. If you want to reach out at all, use the contact form. Email me, email us. I respond personally still to a lot of the emails. I'm not going to be able to do that soon as it's been expanding so fast. But that's still something I really like doing that because I want to, it's part of our mission is that personability, and like I want people to know who they're purchasing from. We're not just an entity, it's me. But yeah, so reach out, follow the story. Love you all. Like sincerely, thank you guys for listening, and thank you, Gabe. Love you, brother.
I love you too, man. I love you too, dude. There's a special sort of like just a special feeling that I've had since I started working with you guys and interacting with Amanita. And, like you said, if anybody like is curious or whatever, like please feel free to reach out to Christian. He's very down to earth dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he has the time, he will get back to you. If not, you can DM us on like TikTok or you can find like me on Instagram. That's one of the best ways to get a hold of me. I'd love to, talk to you about Amanita because it is a very complex plant with a lot of alkaloids and different things like that. And there's a lot that we're still unpacking. So kind of like Christian said, just, keep your eyes peeled and watch the story unfold. But yeah, brother, I appreciate you coming on the Launchpad podcast. Peace out, everybody.